Well, hey there, folks. It's Dr. Franklin, and this is a presentation dealing with cyber psychology, ethical, and methodological considerations. In particular, folks, in this presentation, I'll be talking about the implications of using software to enhance wetware. Wetware is simply a stand-in term for the brain, and we'll be talking about how individuals can have an extended mind if they take advantage of different technological devices as well as software. I'll also spend some time talking about techno-optimism versus techno-pessimism. What you're going to find is that over time, individuals have vacillated across these two extremes. And now, in modern day times, it is very important for us to take into consideration valid viewpoints from both ends of these extremes in order for us to move forward in ethical cyber psychological research. We'll also spend some time talking about the value of a brain-based cyber psychology, given the abundance of psychological processes and motivations and intentions that impact our behavior online and how that affects our offline lives. And then finally, I'll wrap up the presentation by talking about 4 ethical decision-making themes that emerge from a brain-based cyber psychology. Cyber psychology is a developing subdiscipline of psychology that has a lot of overlap with media psychology, digital psychology, and affective computing. Given that technology increases in advanced fashion, it should be expected that cyber psychology will continue to grow. So more emphasis needs to be placed on moral and ethical issues, given the proliferation of technological progress that causes us to become more interconnected and disconnected through smartphone usage, virtual reality usage, social media, and other forms of digital technology. Listen, if you just took a second and just thought about the many ways in which we use technology, you would need more than a second. I mean, we use it to connect with other people via smartphones. We use it to connect with others via social media. We use it to rapidly access information, for example, for educational purposes or to stay abreast of the news. We use it for entertainment purposes. There are plenty of physicians out there that use it for neuro-enhancing purposes. To really help individuals in terms of their quality of life. We offload cognitive information from our wetware, our brains, into devices in ways that cause us to be superior to human beings and animals, and as theoreticians have proposed, give us an extended mind. So given how coupled people are with technology, and you know this, if you have any teenagers in your family and you watch them with their smart devices and you try to take it away from them, you see how coupled people can be, right? It's safe to say that in some instances that damaging the technology can be on par with a direct physical or psychological assault. So given this, there are a variety of ethical conflicts that could emerge. For example, a conflict could be a threat to a person's autonomy or privacy. Just as an example, there are some companies who share your private information or rely on algorithms to manipulate you for capitalistic gain. Philosophical approaches to technology seems to be anchored on 2 distinct viewpoints, techno-optimism and techno-pessimism. The distinction between the two is that one focuses on the benefits of technology, while the other focuses on the threats to autonomy and privacy that could come with the extended mind proposition offered by technology. Closely connected to these historical approaches, you will find historical demarcations. Now, initially and more closely related to techno-pessimism, individuals view technology as an autonomous, dehumanizing, deterministic dynamism that is a threat to all purposes and persons because it's beyond control. Now, the demarcation comes in that there was an empirical turn that took place in which technology as a whole was not defined in one big sweeping narrative of being bad and detrimental, but instead there was a focus placed on localized technologies and how it impacts cultures, values, and needs or exigencies of certain communities. It seems that classical hermeneutical approaches focus on whether or not we should interact with technology given the dangers, while empirical researchers focus more on which technologies we should use given that mind and technology interact in interesting ways to allow our thought processes to extend beyond the wetware of our brain. This parity principle was easily illustrated by Clark and Chalmers' thought experiment. So, as burgeoning cyber psychologists, it's important that you strike a balance or integration of valuing the exploration of brain-based cyber psychology from a classical hermeneutical approach as well as an empirical turn approach. Wittgenstein used language game research as a means to emphasize how interpretation or hermeneutics, that's what hermeneutics is getting at, interpretation, how interpretation of words is largely based on how it's used, and it's dependent on the context of the usage of the word. Just as we do not distinguish words from our worlds and persons, technology is interwoven with our lives. Human meaning is derived from a communal context. So the use of technology is shaped by ways of life that are long in place before the technology shows up. According to Wittgenstein, who many argue would be a proponent of the extended mind theory, cyberpsychology ethics are understood to be features of a mental process, both brain-based and technologically extended, and subsequent behaviors of extended selves online. A simple example could deal with mental processing using the Institutional Review Board as a means to gain approval to conduct research in an offline setting, but then having encrypted pass banks online as a means to safeguard participant information. One ethical behavior is based in offline behavior, while the other is rooted in cyberspace. Given the proliferation of research that shows the connection between brain networks, that is neural circuitry and mechanism, and our usage of technology, there is a need to bring brain-based science into the cyberpsychology domain. A brain-based cyberpsychology, which does not necessarily pare the study of the science down to the brain and can still involve the coupling of brains with feedback loops and algorithms of technology, involves the neurocognitive, social, affective impacts of interacting with technology and the emotional computing aspects of humans interfacing with devices and systems that incorporate computation. From such a broad framework, cyberpsychologists can consider the motivations, intentions, psychological processes, and behavioral outcomes connected with humans interacting with technology online and offline. Ethical decision-making using digital technologies involves mental processes by which an individual or group using technology is morally aware of an ethical issue, makes moral judgments, and establishes moral intent. I want to spend the latter portion of this presentation discussing 4 themes that emerge from a brain-based cyberpsychology framework, and these themes have real implications for ethical decision-making. Ethical decision-making often starts with, again, awareness, judgment, and then intention. However, these processes play out in different contexts and different individuals in a very complex way. So I want to spend some time discussing some of those nuances now. The first theme I want to discuss is dual process theory. This dual processes, automatic and controlled cognitive processing, can inform cyberpsychology research and one's sense of ethics. Controlled processes are associated with conscious awareness, effort, intention, and the capacity for inhibition. Automatic processes, for example, overlearned responses like reading and emotional reactions, are not necessarily in conscious awareness and occur spontaneously. Neuroimaging studies provide support for these dual processes. Some researchers believe that when individuals are faced with an ethical dilemma, they search their memories for a schematic match in an automatic fashion, and then based on that experience, determine a judgment and intention. Now, given that all ethical dilemmas do not present with similarity to our previous experiences, researchers have found that many individuals rely on intention, action, and contact principles to make ethical decisions. No matter which principle is used to justify behavior, it seems that the automatic affective processes generated in the medial prefrontal cortex and the amygdala lead individuals to decrease and prevent harm, and controlled cognitive evaluations performed in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex drive cost-benefits analyses of the situation. Affective processes are certainly involved in ethical decision-making, and that can be seen in the most famous case study of psychology, that of your boy, Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was a railroad foreman who had the unfortunate circumstance of a tamping rod. I know you heard the story, 42 inches in length, 13 pounds, crashing through his lower left cheek and exiting out of the left hemisphere of his brain by way of his prefrontal cortex and dorsolateral skull. It's speculated that he had a lesion in the anterior cingulate cortex, the orbitofrontal cortex, and other areas. Now, after the injury, Gage appeared to be normal as far as his intelligence. You remember, motor abilities seemed to be normal, language abilities seemed to be normal, memory seemed to be normal. However, emotionally, when he returned to work, he displayed a lack of moral sensibility, lack of self-control, and he was prone to outbursts. A somatic marker hypothesis proposes that individuals with injuries to the amygdala and the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC, may be predisposed to act in certain ways emotionally when exposed to certain ethical dilemmas. While traumatic brain injury can affect one's emotional processing of an ethical dilemma, overexposure to violent video games has also been shown to desensitize someone to certain ethical conflicts and promote a decreased activation of previously identified brain areas. When reasoning about ethical issues, it appears that human beings activate different types of neural networks. For example, when making a utilitarian decision in an ethical dilemma, for example, smothering one's child in an effort to save oneself and hundreds of others from an armed foe. This is in the context of the child crying. It appears that more time is taken to make the decision, and areas of the brain related to abstract reasoning and cognitive control are utilized. It appears that human reasoning is not a unified neural phenomenon, but that it is content sensitive. That's good. I'm going to say that again. It appears that human reasoning is not a unified neural phenomenon, but it is content sensitive. Finally, folks, I want to talk about how technologies of the mind inform neuroethical analyses. In discussing this, it is important to make a distinction between the brain and the mind. The mind is a concept, whereas the brain is an actual thing. So the mind is the full set of cognitive resources individuals deploy when thinking. And thinking can be, as we discussed earlier, automatic, reflective, algorithmic, and autonomous. So given that this definition of the mind involves a full bevy of cognitive resources, then one can easily include technology as one of those resources. Therefore, the coupling of the brain and technology allows for novel exploration of self and others in cognitive epistemic ways.